Well, let's do this. LUI here, salute you wherever you are. And guess what? Today, or rather tonight, I decided to give you some sort of a photo collage of my memories of bodybuilding, how it all started. Why am I even doing videos on YouTube, right? Well, it all started, more or less actually, already more than 25 years ago, more than a quarter of a century ago. I was not even an adult. I was about 15, 16 back then, and I stumbled on magazines given to me by a school friend of mine. He brought them from his uncle, right? Well, most of them were from the 80s, right? But nonetheless, I started to collect some posters back then. They were quite popular in the early 90s. They were in the central pages of these magazines, and the one I had are the one you're looking at right now, namely of that of Arnold Schwarzenegger in black and white. I had this one too. It was the central position, and the front double biceps, quite iconic. But I also had the Myth himself, who was kind of a rival of Arnold. I had no clue what the positions were, the poses, the mandatory pose. I used to call this pose kind of a, I called it kind of a cobra. He looked like inhumane, and even his front double bicep, this one right here, was rather special. I mean, it reminded me of a cobra for, the eyes of the cobra here, and you see, the skin that it has on his neck. Of course, right now, looking at Sergio Oliva, I mean, here rest in peace. I mean, you think about the details. This guy was very gifted for his time, and by yesteryear's metric, he was Mr. Olympia, needless to say. But if he was competing today, he would have been way more monstrous. As a testament, see these slats, bro, how low they are. It's like a reminiscent of a current day 90s Dorian Yates in that aspect, in my opinion. But I definitely had a poster of this gentleman. Beret de May was another poster that I got. Now, Beret de May is a different era. Fast forward at least 15, if not even 20 years after. He peaked around 87, 88, and this guy actually was retired by an injury. And a lot of people was basically forecasting this guy to be the next, actually, Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was tall, he had huge arms, and also, he was European and quite charismatic, right? This guy is unknown, but I was mesmerized by him. You know why? Because on the magazine, the French one for that matter, all the magazines were French back then, they said this guy will be the guy who will box with Lee Haney. He used to weigh, back then, in kilograms, I do recall 109, right? So 109 kilograms. They say Troy Zoccoloto is the guy who will take on Lee Haney. Of course, it never happened, but he was kind of icon, kind of a very, photogenic in magazine covers back in the 80s, baby please. Mike Ashley, same era, 87, 88. Very distinctive, very cool guy, very divisive for one reason. I think he said that he was natural, as far as I know. Confirm, guys. I mean, his legs were not loyal even by back then standards, but the upper body, the arms were absolutely special, absolutely saluted vacuum too, right? Bertil Fox, nicknamed Brutal Bertil Fox. He was kind of the mass monster of the late 80s, right? When he was standing next to Lee Haney, it was divisive. It was like the Marcus Rule of that era, the very Nasser somebody of that era, the biggest guy on stage, right? Dramatic happened into his life, actually, right? So I think he is in jail as far as I know. But he was known for those crazy traps development, and the neck, stupendous. Also crazy arms, crazy arm bellies. Right, look at that. I mean, these arms were just gigantic by yesterday's era, bro. But he was Bertil Fox and had all kinds of pictures of this gentleman on my walls. Lee Labrada, right? They nicknamed him actually the Mass with Class, but that happened actually in the early 90s. The version I like about him more was the 80s, right? When he had the stash, the famous stash. This guy was pushing Lee Haney, was placing second. He was good. I mean, this guy was just ecstatic all day and every day. Look at the tilt front double biceps, a rare sight in today's bodybuilding. This guy was so ecstatic. Some ground poses, baby, please. I definitely salute this Lee Labrada. I mean, even Lee Haney, he didn't give him props. He said that little guy who was pushing me, was absolutely Lee Labrada. I had this precise picture with this stash. Another little guy who was pushing also, Lee Haney. I think he placed twice second actually in Mr. Olympia. As a matter of fact, he used to live with Lee Haney at his place and train with him, right? Nonetheless, he was not gifted genetically, but his difference that this little Italian was bringing was the conditioning. One of the first to bring this kind of crazy conditioning, vascularity. You know, we were in the 80s. As a matter of fact, as far as I recall, he was the first guy who told the judge, take a look at my glutes. Don't they even count? Because he had one of the first dice glutes of his era. You guys can see here, they say the Gaspari and Lee Labrada scoreboard will forever be locked in a tie. They were so close, these two little men who were given the run for his money for Lee Haney, for that matter. You can see here Lee Haney with two gentlemen, Labrada and Gaspari, and the guy on the other side is Gary Stridham. This guy, this is the weakest pose. His weakness is the back actually. But everywhere else, he was just proper. He has one of the most stupendous, most muscular pose. The legs, he was better than Lee Haney in several departments. I think he competed versus the dad of Boston Lloyd as well, right? Proceed, shall we? Who do we have here? So we got Lee Haney, center stage. Muhammad Makawi here, very ecstatic guy. You guys know him. We have Al Beckles, right? Or Beckles, right? One of the most iconic biceps. And this guy competed very late in his age, right? And this guy, I think his name is Tom Pearson, as far as I know. Tom Pearson, forgotten gentleman. Proceed, shall we? And then, yeah, we stumble actually on 1991 already. We have this Brit coming, not from nowhere. He was coming, actually. He won the Night of Champion the same year, I think. Actually, yeah, the same year, 91. And he was coming from a second spot. He placed second to Momo Benaziza in 1990. And well, he collided finally with Lee Haney. And if you do recall, the lady who was doing the commentation back then, she said literally that he is like Lee Haney with better legs. Not only that, he was definitely more conditioning. And again, this is one another politics, because in my opinion, I mean, technically, on paper, he should have won versus Lee Haney in his last Mr. Olympia. But, you know, you need to knock the champion to be the champ. But technically, on paper, he was absolutely better in a lot of aspects. He was just more conditioned, better legs, and so on and so forth. Anyway, Lee Haney retired in his early 30s. Nowadays, bodybuilders peak in their early 30s. And then let's move on, shall we? Let's move on right here, actually. Well, no, this is right before when actually Momo. It was in the same year, 91. The previous year, Momo has beaten Dorian Yates, but in Mr. Olympia, they dinged him big time. And they gave him number 5, I think. But quite frankly, in my opinion, as Lee Haney said, he was a giant killer, and he was the Dorian before Dorian. His back was Dorian-esque before Dorian. I mean, he was like a little Dorian, older, thus with a crazier muscular maturity. May he rest in peace, right? This is the lineup I was talking about. I mean, he was dinged. They gave him number 5, I think, but he deserved way, way better. I mean, he definitely outclassed Sean Ray, Lee Labrada, and that's it. At least he should have been, you know, number 3 at least. Nonetheless, let's proceed, because we're talking about the Dorian Yates era, which was a game changer. Then this happened. I mean, Dorian literally happened. He was a happening. You can say Dorian Yates freaking occurred, and didn't he? He brought those crazy lads, unheard of. I mean, Lee Haney was known to spread them very well. I mean, Lee Labrada, he was small, but he was spreading these lads properly. But Dorian, I mean, look at that. It's just mesmerizing. Another level, right? And then we're already in 1993, man. I was in Algiers back then, Algeria, North Africa, man. And that was a Flex magazine that just appeared out of nowhere. I think it was the month of July. Version, man. Damn. About 6 pictures, if I do recall. 6 or 9, correct me if I'm wrong, boys. But tell you what, man. 93, I was like, what? I was 17, right? 1993. We were, wow, is this real life? We've never seen this. I mean, look at the shoulders, almost as big as the head in this perspective. And look at the back development. The glutes were not, nobody was showing the glutes. I mean, I said, Rich Gaspari showed them once, but nobody, everybody was covering. Everybody was, was still in the early 90s, man. But look at what he has done. Look at the calf development, the conditioning, the tie-in between the hamstring, which are just crazy in themselves, and the glutes, and the back is wow. 269 was the weight. Okay, to put this in perspective, right? Because later in, after his retirement, I do recall this. Dorian, don't get mad. I do recall this. He has been asked actually on a very popular magazine, bro, what did you consume back then? He said, bro, I was consuming the usual. So we're talking about the regular anabolic chicken, right? Like the vitamin S. He gave the name of everything. I mean, he was really open-minded about it. But I do recall this vividly. He said, bro, I did not consume, that the gangster shit. The G thing, like it's a G thing, the gangsters. That's it. You guys know what I'm talking about. He said, no, I was not taking it. I was just taking the usual. But, however, on record, later, actually, years later, I do think that he confessed that he took that, the gangster shit, you know what I mean? That's it. And it was literally a crazy metamorphosis, baby, please, from the 1992. And in my reckoning, it was because he was just being pushed by Kevin. He saw Kevin coming, so he had no choice but to create this. And the change was rather drastic. It was, look at it, between 2 years, unrecognizable. Look at the forearm development. This was the last year actually where his arm, actually the biceps was still intact, the left one for that matter, who he damaged in a rowing exercise for all exercises, right? His famous row, by the way, I think. But yeah, I mean, from a kid to a monster, literally, he was already Mr. Olympia, but he just took it to another level. And Sean Ray, who on record was not the biggest fan of him back then. He was the biggest critic of everybody, pretty much, especially him. He said when he came to 93, he killed us all. There was another guy called David Dearth. You guys know him. He's about 53 now, a blonde bodybuilding of old. He said, bro, I can win versus Sean Ray. I can see myself win versus Kevin Lavroni. And he named a lot of bodybuilders. He said, bro, Dorian Yates, even if you put me with him with guns in an elevator, I cannot beat that guy. I mean, he's just on another level. That's it. And then, of course, even the best version of Flex Wheeler 1993, coming from 2 wins in a row, Iron Man and Honor Classic, was not enough to outclass Dorian. Dorian took that, basically Sandow, and it signaled somehow the retirement of Lee Labrada. You can see him here. His era was ending pretty much this year. He placed second twice to Flex in Ironman, also in Arnold, and he was very good. You can take. I just took a look right now before doing this video. I was taking a look at a video of Lee Labrada 1993 Arnold Classic. It was the biggest. So this Lee Labrada here is the biggest. His arms progressed. Better to know, this is not the stash era. This is deep in the 90s. 90, he was bigger, but the game changed, right? Mike Matarazzo, rest in peace. Of course, Sean Ray is here. There was another guy here who was in attendance, right? It was actually Lee Haney, who was still young. He was probably like 34 or 35 then. He was retired since 2 years. So better to know. He was Mr. Olympia in 91. So this is just 2 years later. They asked him, bro, can you come back and compete and beat these guys? He literally said, no, I have no business to do with these monsters now. So he was talking about Dorian, of course, and also Flex Wheeler. The level was elevated, right? But this was a turning point, or rather a crossing road for bodybuilding. It could have went this way or this way. This way or this way. And of course, Dorian was still loyal here. His bubble gut was not there. So it went this way. Hardness, mass, the most massive on stage. and he still beat and bullies everybody. Granted, he was not the heaviest on that stage because that was Lou Ferrigno competing there. And the smallest guy there, his name was Flavio Baccianini. He was the smallest guy. And there was Lou Ferrigno there. They did some posing. It was quite special. Nonetheless, Momo passed away probably almost a little bit more than a year before this. I think he was in Netherlands. And it was the crossing road. This guy right here, single-handedly, knowingly or unknowingly, however, he's one of the most intelligent bodybuilders I know. He's very charismatic. He changed the game until today, for that matter. So this happened. Kevin was there, relaxed. There was no bubble gut. There was no bubble gut in that era. The best version of the caricature, the Sultan of Symmetry, was not able to sway the bodybuilding road, for that matter, the roadmap for this. Now looking at Dorian, I see some flaws. I mean, the bicep, quite frankly, I do not think it is only genetic. It has to do with stretching, right? The bicep, we have two bicepses, right? The biceps here, and also we have the biceps named the hamstrings, who act exactly as the biceps downstairs. They contract, right? And both of them, in my reckoning, with age now and with experience, talking to a lot of trainers, big gurus, and myself, I do believe generally that they need stretching efficiently. And I think that Dorian was not probably doing it properly. I think he could have been way better. And they act on everything. They even influence the sway of the tricep, the injuries, and so on and so forth, the chest, and that's it. I think his stretching was not that loyal. Nonetheless, it was his best year, even by his reckoning, and I do agree. Proceed, shall we? 1994 already. The dead now Night of Champions. You can call it New York Pro. This was it. Mike Francois. Allow me to say it in French because Francois is a French name. But that guy coming from a lifting slash powerlifting background, he was a power lifter. He came in and he became a successful bodybuilder. Hence, he won the show versus who? Versus Nasser El Sombati with his accent. Nasser El Sombati is an Arabic name. He was half Egyptian, half Yugoslavian, living in Germany. Very eloquent, very educated. He has a lot of, he had, may he rest in peace, a lot of diplomas. And he placed second. Back then he was slim stream. Look at him. I mean, he was not the biggest by no means, no bubble gut. This was in 94. Remember what I'm saying. Remember the dates. Proceed up, shall we? So he placed second. His back was definitely the weakness, but he was definitely the aesthetic sense, if you ask me. Who would have thought? I mean, this guy would be something in a few pictures, right? You guys know what I'm talking about. Nonetheless, Mike Francois was known for those crazy legs development. The back was loyal too. But look at the quadriceps. Bear in mind, I told you he was a power lifter, this guy right here, man. Later in life, he had some, kidney injuries, baby, please. Not related to bodybuilding, supposedly. I told you about the back, just proper. And I do recall him mainly for one picture, actually, or one muscle group. The hammies, baby, please. Hamstring, as I do recall, they do act just like biceps. As a matter of fact, I think even you in English, you call it biceps as well. Because in French, we call it biceps femoral, right? Femoral, because there's the femur there, which is basically the long bone. So biceps femoral, and they need stretching, of course. I think their optimal stretching, everything down there, if you want to stretch, it affects even the development of your quadriceps via the range of motion mainly. But that's another story. Then Nasser happened. Happened the year after, pretty much 95. He became big. 95 too, actually. Sean Ray in the center, probably not in this picture. I don't think it was 95, this one. It might be, but I think it was 96. In 95, actually, Sean Ray, I think he placed number 4. Yeah, he placed number 4. Yes, did he? Let me remind. 95. 95. First was Dorian. Second was Kevin. Third was Nasser El Somebody, and fourth actually was Sean Ray, right? And he was quite disappointed. You know what he did? He gained 14 pounds, as far as I remember, he came bigger yet softer. Of course, I mean, you cannot put in 14 solid rack muscle even at the professional level. I hope Cedric is listening now. Cedric McMillan, for that matter.